Hey, welcome. I'm Dan Schinder.
And I'm Steven Schinder.
And this is our first video version of our podcast, which I guess makes it a vlog, called Yesshift. And the first episode as Yesshift because it was formerly, well, we'll get into that in a moment.
Yeah, and there might be an audio version of this for podcast listeners as well later. But yeah, we're addressing the name change, but very briefly, and we'll go over some other Yes-related topics. Like we'll talk about alternate names that the band almost had, and we'll also talk about some responses that we got to a couple videos we posted on Peter Banks and Trevor Horn's birthday.
Because they had birthdays recently, yep.
Yeah, they have like the same birthday, July 15th, but like different years, obviously. And, well, I don't know, maybe it's not obvious, maybe not everyone knows, but who cares?
That's true. For those of you who don't know, I just want to mention, this is two generations of Yes fans. Steve is my son, I'm his dad. Wow, that worked out conveniently. And I've been a Yes fan since, I think, 1971. Steven pretty much since birth, but consciously probably since you were 4, which would have been, if you don't mind me giving away your age, probably 1998 is when you used to stand in front of the TV with a toy guitar and act out 9012 Live over and over and over if it wasn't Monty Python and the Holy Grail on.
Right.
Cool, so let's address the name change. So folks, originally we had a name that some people just couldn't deal with. And I'll throw it out there. It was called Yes Shit. And it wasn't intended to be sliding the band in any way. And most people got that. And I think even some of the people that did get that just weren't comfortable with the name. To us, the word SHIT, well, first of all, it's an acronym. I don't know how many of you know that. It's an acronym for Store High in Transit. And they used to do that with a very valuable cargo back in the day, sailing stuff from Europe and around the islands and whatnot. And that was with chicken poop, basically. So the acronym Store High in Transit became SHIT, which turned into another word for poop. But for us, it was a word for things, happenings, baggage, information,
Stuff.
Yeah, stuff, exactly. But some people, and thank you to those who opposed to the name in a very respectful, kind, polite way, who Steve's going to read some comments that they sent about the show. And it's not for us to brag, it's just to help you all understand what the show's all about, what other people are saying.
We like incorporating like what the listeners say so that it's like a two-way street, so it's not just us. Like we want to hear from like other people as well, because there's lots of Yes stuff to talk about and we can't do all of it.
Yeah, and we want your perspectives. That's the whole thing. Our intention is to create an experience and not just like blab at you. That's not what this is. But again, thanks to the people that kindly suggested we change the name. And there were some that were real irate, there were some that were extremely belligerent, and then there were 3 a-holes. Thank you all very much. That's the last fan change we're doing. That's what you get. If someone asked me to change Drum Talk TV in our 9th year, reaching millions of people a week, I probably would not stop laughing. But this is new, and we figured, okay, we can do that. And save the comments on the rough edges on the logo. The show's evolving, the graphics are evolving, we're evolving, you're evolving, the earth is revolving, and here we go. So that's the name.
And another thing that to consider was that when it comes to text on social media, it doesn't always come across in the tone that we're trying to convey. So to some people, it's like there was misinterpretation of like the logo at a glance, that some people thought we were trashing the band, but if they listen, they see it's not the case. Right. And so we figure we get rid of that barrier so that they're not as put off by it, and like they more clearly see and hear what the show is about. So we added the extra letter. So we give
Sorry,
an F and it's in the name. Yeah.
Yeah. So I tossed around a couple names. I don't even remember what they are right now. And then Steven suggested, how about Yesshift? Because they've shifted so much. They're the only band that's been around for 53 years and can't go more than 2 albums with the same lineup. But we also got a really neat comment from, shout out to Yesshift fan Nick Smith, who said Yesshift could refer to the shift of consciousness that is at the heart of all Yes's lyrics and music. Good choice. Thanks. That's a very astute analogy. And I like that he used the word all, not just this lineup or that lineup or this era or this band or when Steve was in the band and not Trevor, but all. Just
Right.
so you know.
Yeah, I mean, speaking for myself, there might be a few songs here and there where I don't feel that shift in like a higher
Hey,
consciousness,
back
but
off.
when
Just kidding.
but in a lot of their music, I do feel that like I'm taken to another place. Like you've talked about how Tales, like that whole album feels like it takes you to a place you've been before. And
Literally.
so thanks Nick Smith. That's a really good interpretation. Like I didn't even think of that. And also it's kind of like we're like working the yes shift, so to speak. Like, hey, like what do we have to do on this yes shift like this time? So there are
Right.
lots of different ways to use it.
Right. Like a work shift. And we all have different perspectives and sensibilities and of what yes music means to us. And some people think because this member's not there, it's not really yes. Save it. Save it. Okay. If it says yes on the album and the CD, guess what? It's fucking yes. Okay. Can we just get past that? And if it's not for you, that's okay. If Into the Lens, if Open Your Eyes, if Rhythm of Love, if that's not yes to you, that's okay. But don't tell yes or yes fans it's not yes. It's not yes to you, and that's okay. And there is no best. There's no best. There's favorites. Okay. And it's all subjective, just like food, just like art. There's no such thing as pizza sucks. No, it doesn't. It depends on whether or not you like it. It's the same thing with our name, same thing with our logo, same thing with the band, same thing with their music. So, Steve, since we're on the topic of names, why don't you run through the alternate names that Yes considered? And by the way, the late, great Peter Banks, very underrated musician, writer, composer, and guitar player, came up with the name Yes. I think someone said, Peter, do you have an idea for the name Yes? He said, yes. And before he got the rest out, they said, that's it. No, I'm making that up.
Right. Like he did come up with a name, but we don't know if that's how exactly the conversation came about. But yeah, so when it comes to alternate names for Yes, I mean, I'm sure everyone or almost everyone in the fandom already knows like cinema for like the Ray-Ban era and how that became Yes. But at the start, a couple names that were thrown around, John Anderson said Life. That sounds like a very Anderson name to suggest. And Chris Squires suggested World. So, uh, and I mean, I might be biased because we already know the entire history, but I think Yes was the best choice out of those three. But how different do you think things would have been if they had called themselves either Life or World?
Me personally, and chime in, folks, in any of these topics, chime in the comments. Eventually, we will be doing some of these live as well. I love both those other names, actually. I actually like the name Cinema a lot.
Mm.
I don't know how much of the history it would have changed of the band, and here's why. I don't think the music would be different. I think they still would have had that meeting that led to Roger Dean doing the first logo and album cover. And I think we kind of would have ended up where we are because those two names aren't really that different from, it's not like they're diametrically opposed from the word yes and what it means. So
Right, like there's still like the connotation of positivity, you could say.
yeah, and all encompassing, and they're also both one syllable. So I'm not sure it would have really been much different, honestly. And I think they'd be great names for Yes tribute bands for that reason, and because of where the names came from, they're totally legit. Usually, tribute band names take from the name of a song or from a lyric or a combination of or something like that.
Yeah, like we do have the website Yes World, so obviously that stayed in a way, but I think the biggest difference would have been just a few titles here and there. Like instead of Yes Songs, Yes Shows, maybe I don't know if they would have done Life Songs or World Shows, or if they would have used different titles altogether because you don't have the
That's
S
true.
at the end that connects. And I mean, yesterday's would have been something else altogether, assuredly.
World Today's. No, wait, that doesn't work.
Maybe their second album would have been called Time and a World if they chose World, but then that
Wow.
might have been confusing, so I don't know.
Life in a World.
Right.
Or Smoke on the Water. Oh, that was taken.
Yeah.
So that's a interesting, topic. Those are names we know of. Who knows what else bounced around the room or something. Cool. So let us know what you folks think. Next, this happened just a few days ago as we're recording this. What's the date? It's July 18th, 2021. And on July 15th, a gentleman by the name of, I hope I'm pronouncing your name right, John M. McKilveen, I believe it is. If that's it, kudos to you for posting that meme. Yes, am I pronouncing it right, Steve? Yesferatu?
Yeah. Oh, it's pronounced Yesferatu. So this was posted in the Facebook group Yes Band Fan Club. It's band in parentheses.
Right. Thanks for pointing that out.
Yeah. And so for any film people out there, maybe you already know this, but back in the early 20s, there was this silent film called Nosferatu, which was basically an adaptation of Dracula, but they changed some things so that they didn't like have to acknowledge it as an adaptation. So features a vampire named Count Orlok, and he's like that iconic image of the shadow where it's like doing this against the staircase, and
he was averse to turnips instead of garlic, if I remember right. Just kidding.
Yeah, I had to like think about that. I was like, wait, that sounds like something that Dad would make up. But yeah, so in this meme that we're looking at, it's Count Orlok, and he's doing a thumbs up, and the caption says Yesferatu instead of Nosferatu.
Right, in the same old font. And kudos to the fan of that group who chimed in as one of the comments. It set off a great parade of wonderful little happenings. And this is one of the great things about social media. Alex Speck, who said, let's name some songs. And then he put in Heart of the Sunset. Now, remember, this is a horror movie. Heart of the Sunset, Owner of a Tasty Heart, Asleep in instead of Awaken, Revealing Science of Devil. And then there's all sorts of replies. Siberian Ferretu, Wondrous Horror Stories, City of Blood. I'm going to just read down the line. I actually got like someone lit that fuse in my head. I think I added 9.
You contributed a lot.
I'll get to mine, or you can read mine. But before that, we've got Patricio Morales Urch, I think it is, or Urch, Close to the Hell. Blah, Regina says, a seasoned witch could grab you and throw you in a closet. And with that guy, it's so funny. Going for the jugular, Tom Stetzbaugh. Andrew Sweeting says, it doesn't work because Nosferatu is pronounced Nosferatu, not nose. I'm not sure I get that. Then there's like 15 replies to that. I won't go there. Let's skip to, then mine chime in. Steve, I'll let you read mine so it doesn't
go on like
I'm showing off or anything. These are just my stupid ideas. Go for it. Rapid fire. Let's see what you got.
Right. So I see that you started with Circus of Hell.
No, it's Circus of Hell. Big difference. See how that worked?
Yeah. Okay. And then you got Long Distance, Dig Around,
The Grave Master.
Yeah, they got Dig About instead of Roundabout, Blood Will Find a Way, The Rhythm of Blood. I guess those would be on the same album, Big Generator. Speaking of which, you went with Big Terminator next. Dun, 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 dun. And then I guess instead of talk, you put stalk.
Yes.
And is crawls supposed to be like walls? Is that what's going on?
Yeah, you got it.
Okay. All right. And okay. Stabification.
You got it. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. and we can die from here. And in parentheses, he put, and return trip to the grave. um, and then, he performs in the ground instead of in the round.
I have to admit, I laughed when I read that one. And then Barbara Kirsten just put question marks after all that stuff. I don't see any new comments since then. So I hope I didn't spoil the party, folks. I thought there'd be, my idea was to trigger a lot more, but this is just one of the fun ways to have fun with, their content and just being Yes fans, turning what we know and what we're fans of into a game like that, which I love. Steve, I almost said Alex. Steve and I, Alex is another offspring / sibling, but Steve and I both love trivia. We actually brought some trivia. We'd love for you to write us with some trivia. Our email is in the post, but it's yesshiftpodcast@gmail.com. That's yesshiftpodcast@gmail.com. Send in questions, show suggestions, topic suggestions. If you have trivia, send it in. We'll address trivia in a little bit, unless you want to skip to that right now. Steve, up to you.
Well, I have a couple trivia things. I kind of go with the topics that are coming. So I don't know if you want me to say them now or save them for when we go through them.
It's up to you. And by the way, we skipped over something that Steve and I will circle back to, and that's some great comments that Yes fans left on our post of Peter Banks' birthday and Trevor Horn. We'll get back to that.
Right.
Okay.
So I guess we could just go through these topics and then because I don't know what trivia questions you might have, or if you're saving that for much later, or
I just have one, and now I'm actually trying to remember it. I know who it had to do. Oh, I know what it is. Okay, I've got it, and it could be just whenever.
Okay. All right. Why don't we just go through these topics first, and then we can save trivia for toward the end.
Okay, sounds good.
So we'll just keep them in mind. Like we mentioned at the top, July 15th was what would have been Peter Banks's birthday, and it was also Trevor Horn's birthday. I noticed this because Yes World shared posts about them, and I was I mentioned it to you, and I was like, oh, should we post something? And if so, what should we do? And so
it was kind of duh, because we've been doing that on Drum Talk TV for almost 9 years, posting artist birthdays. So we'll get on the ball with that, folks.
Yeah, and so I found one video for each one. I looked through a couple for each one and just decided which one I thought looked the best and sounded the best as well. So the first thing that we posted on that day was a video of the original Yes lineup. So including Peter Banks, John Anderson, Chris Squire, Tony Kaye, and Bill Bruford, performing Dear Father in 1970. And this is a black and white video of them performing it in concert, and it was really rare, and then someone found it and posted it online a few years ago. And so you had to look at this one, right, Dad? What were your impressions of what you saw?
The first thing I thought of is, wow, all of them were younger, I think, than you are now.
Yeah.
Which was wow, because even though I'm 58, folks, and I still look at them as older than me, because they all are, except for Billy, Igor, are probably the only members that are not older than
John Davison,
right?
Benoit, maybe Oliver.
Right. So. Oh, that's true. So I still think of them as older, even when I look at them in their 20s. I still think of them as seniors to me. So that's always weird. But the energy is the first thing I noticed. The energy, Tony Kaye, the way he's bouncing around at the organ, and Chris still being Chris.
Like he and Peter are moving their bodies while everyone else is kind of just looking more normal, but still into it. And it's just fun seeing Peter and Tony being really wild on the stage, Peter turning his guitar back and forth.
Bill actually playing a normal drum set, which was interesting. Just little things like that. But they sounded great. The energy was great. They sounded great. They were so tight, yet it had that 70s and jazz sort of improvisational freeform element, even though I know they weren't just making a bunch of stuff as they went along. It was that free music where there was a lot of latitude in those days to just create and be artful and expansive, if you will. What were your thoughts? And honestly, Steve's more up to date. That sounds funny. Steve's more up to date on the older material than I am. I mean, I know the older material, but I spend much more time with the material from like Wakeman forward, if you will.
Right.
So what did you think? And had you seen that recently, or did you just come across it?
I'd seen it before. Like I remember when it first surfaced and it was like such a big deal in the fan community and was shared around. And it's always fun when these black and white videos surface. It's like, wow, there's actually something Yes related that we haven't seen before, and it's here because, in the age of YouTube, like it's so great, like especially within these last few years we've gotten people posting like lots of different shows and demos that like before the internet people would just like have on tapes or whatever, and you'd have to like look for it or something. And
Yeah.
so it's like there's all this material on YouTube, and it's like, wow, I'm probably not gonna be able to listen to slash watch all of it, but there's something beautiful about how it's like all there,
Yeah, it's
um
amazing. You
yeah.
don't
And
know
so
a world without that.
right. Right. So for this particular video of Dear Father, it, like I said, it was very energetic, and I was just like, it's really cool how it's professionally shot, and you can hear the sound very well. You can hear the instruments pretty well, and I just feel like it's a great depiction of that lineup. And this is just it's 1970, so it would be months before Peter's departure. And so I'm glad that we at least have like this performance and others on video. And
Right.
again, it really shows Peter being into it and being his wild self. Like I get the impression that his departure was partially because like maybe some of the other members felt like they needed someone who wasn't as wild. And you see like in his solo and other side projects that he really gets to show more of what he can do with the guitar. Because like one of the things about Time in a Word was that you had the orchestra, but it would kind of drown out some of the guitar and organ parts in some places. And so
Yeah.
your mileage may vary on like how that sounds. But here we have the version of Dear Father, like where you can hear all the instruments. And there are a couple early versions of that on like as bonus tracks on the first Yes album.
Right.
So this feels close to that, and it's just neat to see that on the stage.
Yeah, I agree. Folks, chime in with this question. What is your one? You get one. What is your one favorite song from the original lineup, from the first two albums? What's your favorite? For me, Steve and everybody, I think it might be Dear Father. I'm thinking through the catalog, and I think it's either Dear Father. Well, I said one, so there you go. I'll use that. What's yours? What's yours?
Yeah, I think mine. Yeah, that's a tough one. Like, there is some great adventurous
One.
stuff on
You
the
get one.
Time into Word album, but I think in this moment, I'm leaning toward Survival. It's such a great closer for that first album and really indicative of how much experimentation they would go on to do. Like, you change from like a really upbeat mood to a more um like a more melancholic sounding one, a bit slower, and then at the end it gets back up to like it closes out with that upbeat music. It's just a great song, and I'm glad that they unearthed it for that Yestival tour about 4 years ago, I think it was.
Yeah, I think my Yesferatu version of my song would have to be Dear Godfather. All right, let's move on. We don't want to take too long, folks, but let's see what
Yeah.
we can squeeze in about an hour. What's next, Steve?
Yeah, so we got these various comments about that video. Some were on our page, some were in a few different groups. So I compiled them into this list.
Let's trade off like every other one. We'll read them off as quickly as we can because there's some really good stuff
Yeah.
here.
Okay.
So this is regarding Peter Banks, dear father. The first one, Dan Jackson says Peter Banks was so underrated. Not to me, he was great live. Absolutely. Next one,
That's
Steve.
true. So Brian Levine says the live version is so much superior to the studio version. You can hear the guitar and organ in the live version. Yeah, I agree, Brian.
Yeah, I feel that way, not necessarily volume wise with those instruments, but I feel that so much of their live music is even better than the studio versions. Frank Mike, excuse me, Frank Michael
I think that's
Joachim.
pronounced. Yeah, I think it's pronounced Joachim.
Yeah. Frank Michael Joachim says, great song. And it is. It's my, I think, favorite from that era, being those two albums.
And then Neil Lang says, I was fortunate to see Flash live in Chicago on their In the Can tour. Flash being the band that Peter like did like after leaving Yes. So my bro took me. Mr. Banks was astounding on the guitar. At the end of the show, Colin Carter threw out his very big tambourine to me, but I was just stunned after hearing the heavenly music and someone else grabbed it.
Oh,
One of the
wow.
best guitarists ever.
Awesome.
Yeah, so I actually gave the first Flash album a listen recently, and
Oh,
I was trying to remember whether I'd listened to it before, and like once I started listening to the first song, I was like, oh wait, I have heard this before, because the beginning kind of reminds me of the beginning of New Language, which Yes would put out much later on the latter album, and also sounds a bit like Every Little Thing. Like some of the stuff on the first Flash album sounds like early Yes, like even the vocals sound kind of like John, but eventually become more of like their own thing. um so yeah, I definitely want to listen to the other Flash albums as well, but that first album is really good, gets a high rec for me.
that's awesome. And Rick Chapman says he's an important part of Yes history. Absolutely, not
Yeah.
just the fact that he came up with the name, but the fact that he's the first guitar player. And we all know, like it or not, drummers and bass players and whoever else, like it or not, the guitar player is a very, very, if not the most forefront instrument of a rock band or a progressive rock band. So, wow, he was like part of like the first class of graduating class of that university. And yes, certainly has become an institution, borderline mental institution a few times, but all in all, a institution nonetheless. And Peter was one of the first five. There's only five people on the planet, living or past, that can say that's pretty astounding, considering not only have they been around 53 years, but I think their music will live on another 53 years with or without any members. So good one. Next.
Yeah, next we have Charlie Newcombe, who said, Banks never seems to get nearly enough credit for his contributions to early Yes. In many ways, that early psychedelic era is my favorite. I think that Banks, Bruford, and Kay really ensured that the band had a very jazzy and exploratory sound during that time. Howe and Wakeman were certainly outstanding, but the arrangements became a bit more composed and prearranged. I think what I loved the most about the Peter Banks era was the wildness, the unpredictability, the very real sense of discovery, and, for lack of a better word, the sheer progressiveness. And yeah, I definitely see that it definitely feels to me like there is a lot of improvisation in like the shows of that early era and in some of the studio stuff as well, probably. But
Yeah,
yeah,
in that
I definitely
era.
see that.
Yeah, sorry, absolutely. And I like that last line by Charlie as well, because they were operating in parallel and crossing over, weaving in and out of the cones that bordered with psychedelia as well. So you had psychedelia, you had jazz, you had some rock, then you had a little bit, you had their classical influences, those that were schooled. Chris having been in choir, Tony Kaye, the orchestration stuff we talked about. So a lot of really neat influences. And that was the first sort of model that they used for creating sheer progressive music. So that's a great observation. Nick Suchi II says Wakeman overwhelmingly credits Banks to the musical style of Yes, rightfully so. Great musician and still had lots of music left in him, sadly missed. You know, I agree. And Rick says some kind of crazy, I'm not sure I remember this shit right stuff, and gives different versions of things, but he's a very magnanimous individual, typically giving a lot of credit where credit's due like this. And Wakeman was never in Yes with, there's no agenda there is my point, I guess. So I like that Rick is a fan, or at least was a fan of Yes as well, and respected those early years.
Yeah, Banks and Wakeman kind of seem like they would get along really well. Like it's just a feeling I have.
Yeah. Next.
So, yeah, next we have Michael Atashevsky, who says, one of my favorite pieces by Peter is his redo of Astral Traveler. He turned the
Yeah.
song into a fiery guitar driven masterpiece, and it cooks on all cylinders. Peter was one amazing and versatile musician and a very intelligent man as well. So I think here Michael's referring to the version that's on the 1995 Yes tribute album Tales from Yesterday, where you have Peter Banks doing Astral Traveler, and it sounds really
Oh,
good. It's
I
great.
haven't heard that. Wow. Maybe I need to replace my first
Yeah.
choice for that lineup with Astral Traveler. I love that song. Huh. Interesting. So many to choose from, like my kids. So I just tell them, Steve, if I haven't told you lately, you're my favorite. I think I told Samantha that this morning. Tomorrow, I'm supposed to tell Alex, and then Aaliyah on Wednesday, Shahada Thursday. Anyways, so yeah, there's just so much to choose from. They're all your favorites. Federico Lippi Bruni says almost nothing memorable in Yes, but his first, oh, I get it, but his first solo album was really good. That's an interesting take. And I think that speaks to, again, our perspectives and sensibilities. I don't know how old Federico is. He might be Steve's age or younger or a little older and maybe just not familiar with that earlier stuff, or maybe it just didn't resonate with him. Or he
Well,
might be referring to the fact that some of that stuff is a little bit lost in history in some ways, I think. You don't
well,
hear much of the studio, you don't hear much airplay on the radio of stuff on those first two albums, the original versions.
well, I feel certain that what Federico was getting at, because he mentioned the first solo album, and I think might have even like posted like a YouTube link or something. Um, so two sides of Peter Banks. I think what he was getting at was that on the early Yes material, Banks's contributions maybe aren't as memorable as like the stuff he has on his solo stuff. And I gave that album a listen recently as well, for the first time, I believe. And I was like really impressed by it. Like it came out in 1973, I think. And so you get to hear more of Peter like really going wild and experimenting. What's kind of weird is bits of it kind of remind me of bits of what Yes did in the 70s, like Roundabout and parts of Relayer, but of course it's like a separate thing. And so it kind of makes me think that maybe Peter Banks could have still been a good fit for the band if he had stayed, but I'm not sure like how much they would have let him experiment as much as he wanted to. So
Hard to say,
hence
yeah.
we got the history we got. So yeah, it was a really good first solo album from Peter. So yeah, I get what you're saying, Federico.
Cool. We got one comment to sort of pass on regarding Trevor Horn.
Yeah,
Um,
so the video that we shared for Trevor Horn was, this is like going like
and
almost
it's
the
on the
opposite.
Yes,
And
but I just want to mention it's on the Yesshift podcast page. The Yesshift Facebook page is where these two videos are that Steve's referring to.
right, so this video is from pretty much the opposite side of the Yes timeline. Like we go like really early to like really far in the future, like 3 years prior to the present. So this is from 2018, July 21st that year, I want to say, in Philadelphia, and it's when Yeah. Well, there's a thing called Yes Fan Fest that was going on in the area around that time, and so you had a few former Yes members who attended like the Q&A and guested and stuff. So you had Trevor Horn guest singing on "We Can Fly." You know, the that beginning part of the Fly From Here suite after the intro. So I think they played "We Can Fly" by itself at this concert, and yeah, so they had him singing. Jay Shellen was on drums during this. John Davison sang alongside Trevor at certain parts. He also had Billy Sherwood, Steve Howe, and Jeff Downs, because of course, like it has Jeff like knows the song, so of course. But yeah, what did you think of that video, Dad?
I liked it. So to give some perspective, in 1980 when Drama came out, I, like most Yes fans at the time, was just shocked that John and Rick were out and these two guys were in that weren't really from the progressive world. But the album I was open to, and the album was awesome. The production's great. We've talked about that before, how squashed going for the one and Tormato sound, and then they have this big fat ass sound with Drama. But I remember seeing them live, and I was in like the sixth row in the round, not in the ground, in the round at the LA Forum, 1980, and he was great. So I saw the young Trevor Horn perform in person, and to see the older Trevor Horn, he sounded really good. There were a few spots that like wavered a little bit, but you know what? We're talking, what is it, 41 years or whatever? You know, it's like, of course,
48 years later.
oh, geez.
Or
So,
oh wait, actually, hang on. 38. Sorry, I added an
okay.
extra 10.
Yeah, so of course someone's voice is going to change, you know, from 1980 to 2018. And I thought he did a great job, and it was great to see him. I love nostalgia and stuff like that. That's why the Union thing really turned me on that tour. So I liked it. I was very happy to see him. I wish we could have seen him at our show. We know that Patrick Moraz turned up for a few of those. I wish we could have seen Patrick.
Yeah, I think Patrick was at the Philadelphia stuff, like the
Yeah.
Yes Fan Fest stuff. Yeah.
Tony K. I spoke with Tony very briefly when we saw him here in Phoenix on my way to interview Alan before the show. Yeah, it was before the show while Carl Palmer was doing his thing. So it was neat that there was this sort of interchanging sort of, you know, thing. Dylan Howe on drums playing most of the songs that Bill played on. It was cool.
Yeah, Tony was at our show that we saw on the Yes 50 tour, and it was cool like seeing him in person.
Yeah.
And we actually have a bit of news about Tony K that we'll go over later, but
yeah, that's right. Wow, I almost forgot. Yeah.
Right, but so we have one comment from someone about this Trevor Horn video. And you know, like Facebook is weird, like the algorithm and like how many people share and whatever. So I guess not as many people saw this video. Like there were certainly some likes, but this was the only comment that I was able to find. This is from Scott Bluebond, who says, I was sitting right in front of him for this. I missed the original tour, the only one I missed in 47 years. College will do that to you.
Wow,
And-
screw that. What's the importance of college when it comes to a Yes show? Come on, dude.
Yeah, no, we're teasing.
Yeah.
Yeah, I understand like college can get busy and sometimes like you can't get a ride or be on time or whatever. But yeah, that was really cool that you were able to sit in that like right in front of him, Scott. Like I know that I would just be gushing if I was in that position, like seeing Trevor Horn sing there. And yeah, like we said, he doesn't sound exactly how he sounded back then, but
he sounded good.
Yeah, I loved his performance. Like just like, you know, it's like probably the closest thing we got to like a Union 2, you know, getting these guests every now and then that year.
Yeah, and let's also remember that Trevor went on to be a great producer, including the producer of 90125, which is really cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, cool. So let's I don't know if we want to read all these in their entirety, as nice as they are. They're kind of long, but we're going to read just a little bit of some fan feedback of our show, give some shout outs, and then we will talk about Tony K,
Yeah.
and then
And
do
then
trivia, and then
trivia.
we're out.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, cool. So I'll read, you read the first one, I'll read the next one.
Okay, so this is from Brian Harris, who emailed us. Hi, just listened to your podcast, and aside from the name, I really enjoyed it. I love that you cover all eras of the band and aren't in the Yes Isn't Yes Without John camp. I first saw Yes in 1976 on the Solos show tour and have seen them over 100 times since. My favorite tours were the Tormata Tour, Union Tour, wow, those are both in the round, and the 50th Anniversary Tour, but there have been great shows on all of the tours as well. And while I'm not a big fan of the album, I love the song Open Your Eyes and agree that The Ladder is an excellent album. But I think most of their albums are great. I'd love to hear Into the Storm live. The times I saw the Fly From Here tours, they didn't play it. I did see the full Fly From Here suite performed, though, and I saw the original Fly From Here in 1980. So keep up the good work. Just change the name.
Which we did.
Yeah, we did. And thanks for asking nicely. And yeah, we really appreciate that feedback.
And to give a little context, some of the stuff Brian's referring to is the topics that we were addressing in that particular episode. And as we are now, we asked
the first episode of our podcast. Yeah.
Yeah. So we asked people, chime in, and was the one thing he referred to. I lost my train of thought. It's in the next thing, but he referred to my statements regarding The Ladder, how I think that's probably the most underrated Yes album, actually, if there's such a thing, or underappreciated, whatever. Next one is from Nick Smith. This came from one of our Facebook posts of, I don't know if it was the same episode or not, but Nick says,
it's of the first episode.
Oh, okay, great. He says, this one's kind of long. I'm going to try and blow through it, and then we'll read excerpts or shorter ones and move on to Tony K news and trivia, and then we'll leave you alone. My favorite album, and if you need to go get a beer, sandwich, or take a piss, just pause this. My favorite album is Tales from Topographic Oceans, Us Too, because it's the most experimental and requires the wildest range of listening skills to appreciate. That's an interesting point.
Definitely.
My favorite album cover is the same. Me too. You too, Steve? I think.
It's a great cover. I'm not sure if it's my favorite.
Okay, you're out of the band. And then Nick goes on to say, let's see, the same because of the added suggestions by Yes members. This makes it feel more like a work of visionary art than Dean's other paintings, which he himself calls landscape art. Visionary art is more geared towards expressing spiritual symbolism. In addition, the Gatefold album that opens up, Gatefold is also the best inside cover ever made. I agree. I love the nature photography in combination of the lyrics. I forgot about those little squares. Yeah, against the backdrop. And those are my words I added, not what Nick wrote. And then I'm jumping back in and what Nick wrote. I'm sorry. And the dark background and white type. My favorite concert was Tales from Topographic Oceans, and the drama concert. Oh, Tales from Topographic Oceans / drama concert of 2016. Not that you asked, and that's okay. We're open to it. My favorite lineup is Anderson, Howe, Squire, Bruford, Wakeman. Most lineups of Yes are short-lived. They all are. 2 albums or less. So that's my input again. So the only reason I gave this a slight edge up is because the 2 albums they did together were superlative, and Bruford impressed me more than any other drummer I ever heard, at the point where I became a lifelong fan of his work and saw all of his bands he was in. I was also into Wakeman's work around this time. And then we played a little game that we'll play another time, not today because we're going kind of long already. We've got trivia, but Steve and I play a game at the end of episodes sometimes called Antithesis Yes. So it's a play on words of antithesis of Yes, where we name songs that are completely opposite of each other. So Nick gave us his. He picked Soft as a Dove, as did Steve, in contrast with something. And I think it might be exactly the same, right? Steve, Soft as a Dove in contrast to Sound Chaser. Yeah. And then he says, I'd pick The Ancient in contrast to Owner of a Lonely Heart.
Yeah, big those generator. Are complete opposites.
Yeah. Big January favorite is I'm running while love will find a way is too crass commercial. Okay. And then to close out what he said, he says, I don't think myself.
Yeah,
I
this
don't
is
think.
a quote from Mont Campbell, who is a drummer who's performed with Egg and National Health. So,
And
yeah.
he says, I don't think that self-indulgence is a good thing in art because if you're trying to please other people all the time. Oh, I do think, thank you. I was going to say that
Right.
doesn't make sense. I'm sorry. I do think that self-indulgence is a good thing in art. I don't think it's called self-indulgence. I think it's called art. But if you are trying to please other people all the time, you stick to the same model all the time. You mean like the name of our podcast? Oh, sorry. And nobody hears anything
Moving
new.
on.
Yeah, so nobody expects anything new. Mont Campbell of Egg National Health. Yeah, I agree. Um,
Yeah, and then we got Mitchell W, who sort of commented in reverse order. Like Mitchell listened to the second episode first and then the first episode second. So what Mitchell said about the first one is 3 songs, yes, have never played live. I want them to play live, are State of Play, Can You Imagine, and Without Hope You Cannot Start the Day. Um and yeah, that kind of led to me replying with like he should listen to the extended version of Without Hope that's on YouTube, and he really liked it.
that's cool.
And yeah, and then we got his comment on episode 2. Should I go ahead and read that?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, so Mitchell said when he mentioned a Chris Squire tribute song on the Quest, and that refers to our speculation that maybe Minus the Man or maybe something else could be a Chris Squire tribute song on that album. We don't know for sure, but
which is interesting because it could tie into what looks like a silhouette of Chris. Someone pointed out on the album cover,
right.
looking out into the valley.
Right. Well, like it's definitely a rock, but that could be intentional for all we know. Like we'll just have to wait and see and if anyone says anything. But so he says it made me think of a few of Billy Sherwood's, in my opinion, beautiful bass solos on his solo albums. The title track of Archived and In Memory of, written before Squire's passing, from At the Speed of Life. Now I wonder if the Quest will have one of these moments. As for live performances of the Quest songs, it might be an opportune time for a Time and a Word / magnification featuring the Quest version of the album series tours, with the live orchestra, of course. Wow. It would be a bold and deep cut heavy fan pleasing concert. That's my fantasy going forward. Thanks for doing this podcast. I like it a lot. Love a little bit. No, I'll start that over. Love the little bit of shade you throw at toxic yes commenters in the intro. Keep it up.
He's referring to our pre-recorded intro of the normal audio podcast. So give those a listen. Thanks so much for that, Michael. And I love his idea for a tour. Oh my gosh.
That's Mitchell, not Michael.
Mitchell. I'm sorry. I'm sorry, Mitchell. I think that would be, honestly, I'm speculating, that could create some huge redemption for a lot of wafflers out there. Can Yes just add some syrup and sweeten that up for the wafflers? I think that could do it.
Yeah, I would love to see a concert like this, like Time and a Word, Magnification, and The Quest, just every song on those albums. I don't know how feasible that would be.
With an orchestra, that would just be awesome.
Yeah, you know what would be an interesting episode for you and I to do sometime down the line, like after the Quest comes out, would be like if we had to choose like half the songs from each of these 3 albums to include in concert, like which ones would we choose? That might be an interesting one to do.
Yeah, because it's a great idea, Mitchell. That's a great idea. Let's now move. Thanks, fans. Go ahead and chime in with any of that or anything else, anywhere, anytime. And let's move on to Tony K news. So he's got an album called End of Innocence, which, let me see if I'm pulling up the right image. So I told Steve, he asked me, should we mention this? Yes, we should. And what I wanted to comment on is Roger Dean is my favorite artist, well, other than my wife, Enja. My wife's a professional artist, but as far as album cover art and some other things, I've been a Roger Dean fan since Fragile came out. I'm really kind of surprised at this. I totally get the vibe and everything Roger's going for, but the text is actually very hard to read against the background, but I do love that Tony K has his name and title of the album in Roger Dean in as part of the Roger Dean universe, even though Tony wasn't on a Roger Dean covered album other than The Onion.
Well, he was in Badger, and if I'm
Right, I
not
was going to mention
mistaken,
that. Yes.
oh, okay, all right.
Yeah. So other than, and that was an interesting crossover way back when was that, Steve? 74, 75, when Badger came out and he had Roger
Um,
Dean do his album, which was interesting
yeah, like
that he,
one, oh,
go
go
ahead.
ahead. Oh, yeah, sorry. So one live Badger, the live album came out in 1973, and
Oh,
it was it was actually like the opening act for Yes at the Rainbow Theater, which is where the Yes Songs video was done. So it's like pretty much between One Live Badger and Yes Songs, you kind of have documentation of almost that entire night. Like for some reason, Siberian Khatri is on the video. I don't know why, but yeah. So that came out 73, and then you had White Lady. I guess this is a studio album which came out 74.
yeah. Interesting stuff. So I haven't heard any of this. I don't know if any of it's available as
Oh,
samples, but it's
actually know.
pre-order. You have?
Yeah, so
Oh.
end of well, I'll go back to what I think about the album cover in a moment, but End of Innocence, um so it's about Tony K's like it's basically it's described here as like marking the events and journey that followed the world-changing moments of 9/11, and mentions in the press release that Tony met um he met Danny Torchia in the week following 9/11, and that's his wife, I believe. Okay, yeah, this album has been interwoven with the growth of their relationship into marriage. And so he actually posted End of Innocence on YouTube, accompanied by like news footage of like that before, during, and after the event, I think. And um, I remember I've listened to that video several times over the years. It might not still be up on YouTube, but I remember some of the music very vividly. Like you have some really good piano stuff on there. Like I guess it's at the beginning when it just seems like a normal day, and you have like the casual stuff like do 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 do, and then you have some stuff throughout that honestly kind of sounds like it could be a film score, and then like and then at the end it's sort of like the light at the end of the tunnel with the music getting more optimistic, like. And so I'm very curious to hear what this version sounds like, because it says on the Cherry Red Records website that it's been re-edited and I guess let me look for the exact wording. Um, okay, I'm not sure if it's even on the website, but it has been re-edited, and so I'm curious to see like what this updated version sounds like sort of compare and contrast. And it comes out September 10th, so a day short of the 20th anniversary of 9/11. And I mean, weirdly, September 10th will also be the 20th anniversary of Magnification's release.
Hmm.
So yeah, so as for the cover art, you got like the smoke and like the fire, and it's like scrolling past it, like I would never have guessed at first glance, like if it weren't for the text that said Tony K and End of Innocence, that is so clearly a Roger Dean style font. Like if that had been absent, I would not have guessed that this was a Roger Dean album cover. Like you have like smoky looking stuff on a few things in the 70s, I guess, but by and large, the landscape stuff is what I think of most when I think Roger Dean. So I think it's like really going out of his uh like what he's usually known for with his repertoire, so very experimental, and I think that's very interesting that he like went with this choice.
Right. Steve, just real quick before we go to trivia, do you know who else is on the album?
I know that his wife sings on a song somewhere in the middle, but
Okay.
mostly it's mostly instrumental, and I think
Oh,
Tony does. Yeah, like it's very Tony heavy. I'm not sure if anyone else is on this album, but yeah.
well,
So
cool. We look
yeah,
forward to
I
that.
remember. Yeah, I remember the video being like 45 minutes. I don't know if this will be the same length or maybe extended, but we'll see.
Great. So before we go, folks, let's play some trivia. I don't know if you have any, Steve, but I have just thought of one question yesterday or something that I'll just throw out there. What is the
Okay.
one song that's not an acoustic song that Chris Squire, when they perform live, Chris Squire does not play bass? It's not an acoustic song. And when they've performed it live, Chris Squire does not play bass.
Is it? Well, I might get some heat if I don't know this, but is it? Is it? Uh,
It's kind of off the wall
Ru-
unless someone saw it and knows. They wouldn't know.
yeah, because I don't know if they've played this live when Chris was around, but is it "Run Through the Light"?
No, but he
Oh,
didn't play bass on that recording. I think he played piano and Trevor played bass, but it's something that's only been done while Chris was alive. It wasn't a one night thing. It's whenever they performed this song on this particular tour, he did not play bass.
okay. See, on this particular tour, that
Curious to
might
see if
be.
people get it, if there's a bunch of comments or other guesses.
Yeah,
Being that
like
this
let
isn't
us.
live, it's hard to tell, but we'll get to some live ones. Go ahead. What do you think? Throw a dart.
Right, like let us know if you got it before we said the answer. But yeah, I don't know. I'm stumped. Like,
Nine
sorry to
voices.
disappoint.
Nine
Oh,
voices.
okay.
Chris only sang and played Taurus pedals with his feet. No, and didn't even wear his bass.
Okay, yeah. I thought maybe it was something from the ladder, but it wasn't. Like I was
Yeah.
going all over the place in my mind.
Yeah. Do you
All
have a
right.
trivia question?
Yeah, I have like two or three actually. Um
Okay.
yeah, so I'll go first with the Peter Banks related ones. So what is what was Peter Banks's favorite Yes song to play?
Yours is no. No, I'm kidding. um, was it Dear Father?
No,
Was it Every Little Thing?
no,
Sweetness?
no.
I don't know. I don't have a clue.
Think back to like what one of the
Oh,
listeners was saying early in the show that they really liked that Peter Banks did. Okay, should I just say the answer?
yeah, yeah. I give.
Okay. Astral
Oh, that's
Traveler.
right. That's guitar heavy on the redo. Yeah, duh. Sorry. Yeah,
Right.
good. That's great.
Okay, and this is another Peter related one. So he gave the answers to both of these at Yestival, a Yes fan convention back in 1994. But so when asked what his favorite Yes song is, what did Peter Banks provide as his answer?
Ugh, I don't have a clue. I don't even. Yeah, I can't even speculate.
Right. So in his exact words, owner of a lonely heart actually. And then like nobody clapped and he was like, "Oh, that went well, didn't?" And it was like really funny.
Wow. I wonder, was he serious or playing around?
Yeah, so like for the longest time I thought he was being serious, and then like watching it recently I did think, "Wait, was he actually joking?" But I do kind of wonder if maybe he is kind of impressed by how the song came out. Like I don't know, like I feel like he and Trevor Rabin would get along really
Let me
well
see
for some
that.
reason.
Yeah, send that to me.
Right.
Want
Okay.
to
Yeah,
do
I'll send
one
that to
more?
you later.
Okay.
Yeah, I have one more. So since one of the listeners mentioned "Love Will Find a Way," which, I mean, I get that it's definitely commercial, but at the same time, like to me, it's such a bop, and I get a kick out of hearing it and
I like that
whatnot.
song.
But
Yeah.
yeah, and so the question is, which musician, like which famous musician, did Trevor Rabin originally intend to write "Love Will Find a Way" for? Um,
Shaka Khan.
no,
Willie Nelson.
no.
um, can I ask what genre of music?
I guess it would be kind of folksy,
Oh,
maybe.
wow. I don't know. I
Yeah, I'm
never
just
heard
looking
this.
up. I'm just looking up this person to see if that's the genre. um,
I'm not familiar with this
or I
story, so
guess okay, it's listed as rock, but that doesn't really help.
okay. Yeah.
Okay, but do you want me to just tell you the answer?
Yeah.
Stevie Nicks.
Oh, wow. Really?
Yeah, Trevor was writing it for Stevie Nicks, and like she like even wanted to like change the lyrics and whatnot. And so, but then Alan White told Trevor, maybe we should do this song for Yes. And Trevor has said in an interview, I think it's on the Greatest Video Hits video with like all the Yes music videos. He said, and to this day, Stevie Nicks still tells me, I still sing my lyrics whenever I hear that song, like the
Oh,
lyrics that
that's so
she
funny.
replaced.
Yeah. And that video was filmed in an airplane hangar at Van Nuys Airport in the San Fernando Valley, where I grew up, and where I used to take you and your brother and sisters to watch airplanes when you were little. We'd sit in the car and have McDonald's or something and just watch the planes. Remember?
Oh wow, I didn't know those were
Oh,
filmed.
really? 27 and already burnt out. Just kidding.
Yeah, well, I turned 27 in November, but yeah, pretty much.
Yeah, cool. Hey, folks, we hope you enjoyed this first video version of Yesshift, and technically the first episode of Yesshift. And we're actually going to re-edit the intro to the other episodes that we did on audio and release those. I think there were only 2. We've got 6 others recorded. Those are coming out. We're going to be trickling them out probably once a week. We'll do this live from time to time on our Facebook page here. But we're not only just promoting our podcast episodes here, this is also where we're going to share news, stories, photos, videos, things like that. So tell your fellow Yes heads. As you can see, we're not like trying to keep it all to ourselves. We're giving nods to our fans, to fellow other Yes groups. And we'll do the same with pages and things like that. We'll eventually have some people from the Yes camp, past and present, as guests. Everybody from band members. I'm hoping to get Roger Dean and some others on. And there you go. Yesshift. That was a pretty good shift. I'm Dan Schinder.
And I'm Steven Schinder.
And you can email us with your thoughts, comments, questions, berating, whatever, winching, whining, whatever you got, we welcome it, to yesshiftpodcast@gmail.com, and the dot is lowercase. Right. Thanks, everybody.